Welcome on the great Albert Breer. What's up, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, guys? How we doing? Somebody have a gambling problem there? I'm like half listening, half not. So.
Somebody did. Yeah, somebody did.
did.
And life's turned around for them. We're quite happy for them.
Hey, Albert.
Good to hear.
Who's the biggest family member that you've ever had a fight with about said player because of something you said or didn't say?
The biggest fight I had with a family member of a player?
Yeah.
So I have a pretty good one, actually. It wasn't a fight, but this was probably 14 years ago. I mean, I've had fights with players, families before where, you always, in those situations, you always back down because obviously it's not worth it to fight with them anyway, but you understand where they're coming from. And, our job is to sort of be emotionally detached from what we're covering. And obviously they're all very emotionally involved. Right. So there was one situation. I was in Buffalo, and I don't know if you guys have ever been in these locker rooms, but some of the visiting locker rooms in some of these stadiums are super duper tight. Mm-hmm. And so Buffalo is one of the tightest, where you are legitimately, if you're going in there to talk to players after a game, you're like climbing over bags, you know what I mean, to get to where you need to go. So, I was at NFL Network at the time, and our job was to figure out, our job was to go in after these games and grab as many players as we could and try to get as many one-on-ones as we could. So the Bills were playing the Bengals, and I grabbed Pac-Man Jones. And so I'm talking to Pac-Man Jones on and I go through the interview, and it's like a real, obviously really quick. There are a ton of people around. It's hard to maneuver in there. But okay, good. I got one under my belt. And they took it and they ran it back and basically ran it as live, right? As if I was doing it live. Fed it back, all of that. And what I didn't realize was we were shooting right into the entrance to the shower. And so, long story short, there was an offensive lineman for the Bengals at the time who is a great player who I'm very friendly with now and was friendly with then, who walked in front of the shower, and right there on TV, because I guess we didn't vet it enough, there was his behind going into the locker, going into the shower. And so the next day his wife was not pleased with that. And we can have a laugh about it now. But, I mean, it was, my kids, her kids had to see it and everything else. I guess they were watching those games. It's just not good.
That's the first time they saw their dad's ass.
Yeah, so it wasn't great. And, honestly, in a situation like that, I just have to fall on the sword because there's so many, and you guys know this as well as I do. There's so many people on the back end that do so much, and get so little recognition for it. That in a situation like that, if you're the guy who's in front of the camera, you sort of have to take the blame for everybody. That's sort of the rules of engagement there. And so yeah, I had to kind of fall on the sword. And it's true. I should have thought more about where we were shooting. I suffice it to say, I learned after that, be sure if you're doing one of those with a player, have them shoot into a locker. Don't have them shooting anywhere else.
Albert Breer on the North Olmsted Chrysler Jeep Dodge
Ram.
And
in my defense, there wasn't a whole lot of room there, so I was just kind of taking what I could get.
I just think you got off lucky with it only being your booty cheeks. If it was downtown Julie Brown, I'd be pretty upset if that was just hanging out, walking to. But
what's funny?
Everyone's seen my ass, Albert.
It's funny knowing what player that was too, and then obviously the track that then he took. Because if I remember right, Albert, and I do remember the story, it was a whole campaign then to not have people in the locker room afterwards. It's that guy then became such a big part of the media. Yeah.
I mean, I look, I totally understand the sensitivity about that stuff and everything else. It was a dumb mistake that I didn't repeat for sure.
Albert, I do have to ask you here because we're the part where, all right, we've talked a lot of quarterback. We're looking obviously at the other parts of this team. So it's kind of our, I think it's biannually check-in. Our going into the season, especially if things get rough, are Stefanski and Barry still a package deal this year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they arrived together. They'd built a relationship previous to working together. I think those, like, firing one and not the other is always kind of problematic. You know what I mean? Like, and you want people knowing that they're sort of tied at the hips so they can trust each other. And so you prevent like a Game of Thrones type of situation. Not that either of those guys would be prone to it, because I don't think that's really their personality anyway. But I think you guys know as well as I do, like the Haslams were very much in on the idea of having a forward-thinking, data-driven, analytically smart organization. And there were a ton of fights over that, over their first, 7 or 8 years. And I think they finally, in 2020, kind of found the balance, right? Like, and this is sort of our vision for the franchise, and this is the way that we want it run. And here are the guys to do it. And so, like, I think, like, the whole group, like, I think detaching from one would make it difficult to go on with the other. That's just me talking. And it's certainly possible that, you get to the end of the year, things don't go well, and one side seems more at fault than the other. But I still view them as a package deal.
Albert, we've kind of been talking a little bit. I believe it's going to be Flacco into Shedeur Sanders, and Nick says I'm living in my fears because I like Shedeur, but he's like, if you like Shedeur, you should want him to start week 1. I cited the Patriots last year for reasons why you don't necessarily have to start a quarterback week 1, but I think Shedeur is such a different situation in general. Do you feel like I am living in my fears in that suggestion that I don't want him to start right away, especially with the strength of schedule and how hard it is out of the gate?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and here's the other thing is, like, I think it's, after the year that the players just went through, I don't think you can look at it this way. I've said this to you guys before, but like, I just think it's really hard to look at it. Again, when the players have gone through what they've gone through the last 2 years, if Joe Flacco is clearly the best option in camp, give him the job. Like, you can't, what does that say to your players if it's like, yeah, well, Joe is much better, but like, let's just throw Shedeur out there to see what we got. Like, how are the rest of your players going to digest that? Like, are they really gonna fight for you, especially if you start with a couple losses and it doesn't look good? That's an easy way to lose your team, So I think, this is going to go to the best quarterback. I think you owe it to the players in that locker room to do it that way. And I have such a hard time, seeing a team that's in the spot the Browns are in, throwing the season overboard in the name of quarterback development, especially when that quarterback's a 5th-round pick. And I mean, like, I'd ask you, why aren't you saying the same thing about Dylan Gabriel? You know what I mean? Like, he was drafted higher. So, like, I think people have this perception that just isn't the reality of who Shedeur is yet. Now maybe he could become something more in 3, 4, 5 years, but I just don't think I don't think like what the perception of Shedeur was in February or March is going to weigh much on this at all, because I don't think it's the reality of how the NFL saw it.
Albert, Eric Mangini on Fox Sports 1 kind of alluded to the idea that he thinks Stefanski hasn't given Shedeur first-team reps yet as a way to try and tamp down Shedeur mania and the hype around Shedeur. So just kind of piggybacking off that, is the Browns' handling of Shedeur till now, is that impacted by their desire to tamp down the noise around Shedeur?
No, I think it's because he had a bigger learning curve than Dylan Gabriel. That's the reality of it. I mean, Dylan Gabriel started how many games in college? Dylan Gabriel crushed his pre-draft process. Like, now that doesn't mean there wasn't stuff for him to learn along the way, but I mean, I wrote this back in March and April that there were teams that were like sort of stunned by how little Shedeur knew, relative to what they thought, him being the son of Dion and having played for Pat Shurmur in college, so I think Shedeur, and maybe this isn't any fault of his own, but I think Shedeur had a lot more ground to cover than Dylan Gabriel did. And so because of that, like, it's harder to put him out there with the first team. Again, like, you have to be able to answer to your players in these sorts of things. That's the way I look at it, at least. And, I think, just as far as being in a position to tell your players why you're doing something, if Shedeur is behind, it's harder to give him first team reps. Can you earn those going forward? Sure. But I think the reality is he was pretty far behind to begin with.
Are we wrong then, in kind of staying in that same vein, to write off Kenny Pickett before he's even been given a chance here?
Sure. I mean, I think all four of those guys are going to be given opportunities, but I think those opportunities are sort of based on merit now, and going forward. I mentioned, I think I used the term first round bye with you guys. I think I debuted that term with you guys. That was on the fly that I said that, but I do think it's the truth. Like, I think he has had a first. I think Joe Flacco has a first round bye to the quarterback competition in July and August, and the other three guys are sort of battling it out for reps. And my guess would be right now that you'll see the thing split up according to what happened in the spring. And Shedeur made progress, no question. I mean, did he make enough progress to make himself a factor in the competition? We'll see.
Albert Breer on the North Olmsted Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram hotline. Do you agree with the assessment that is now coming out? I don't think it was the assessment, the assessment at the time, but it seems to be a revisionist thinking here, or at least revisionist take here. But that the Steelers failed Kenny Pickett more than Kenny Pickett failed the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I think he was overdrafted for sure, and I think he's another one where I don't know that he was as ready for the pros as people thought coming out. And then, he's jumping on a moving train in Pittsburgh, and that's tough, where it's sort of I think somebody most of the teams that draft quarterbacks in the first round, a lot of them are rebuilding. And then the teams that are really rolling, a lot of times you'll have a lot of help around the quarterback. In this case, the team was in good shape. The Steelers were in good shape. They weren't a bad team when they drafted Kenny Pickett, but they didn't have this great offensive infrastructure around him at the time, So did they fail him? I mean, it's just sort of the situation was what it was, when they drafted him. I think certainly, you can see now that he was overdrafted. But we've also seen situations where guys have come back from that. Sam Darnold was obviously a great example. Geno Smith. So we've seen guys, getting the benefit to sit down for a minute and digest everything and get another look at things and turn it around when they get to a new setting. So we'll see if Kenny can do that. I mean, it's been less time for him than it was for Geno Smith. I think the path is probably a little bit more analogous to what Sam Darnold went through. But I don't think the Steelers screwed him. I think it was just kind of like a confluence of circumstances that made it difficult for him to be the quarterback of a team that was ready to win in the moment.
It feels like just about everything's on the table in the Shedeur Stewart situation. Can you tell us what you know and kind of explain to us what actually is possible?
Yeah, it's language. I mean, it's language in the contract, and it has to do with defaulting on guarantees. And, there's a lot of mumbo jumbo there that I don't want to bore your listeners with, but more or less, I mean, it's about what it would take to void the guarantees in the contract. And so that's important for a player because your first round pick, the main thing you're getting is the guaranteed money. It's not a massive amount of money in a relative sense, but the one thing you do get for being a first round pick is that money is guaranteed. So you don't want to make it easier for a team to void your guarantees. And of course, this is one of those too, whereas if he plays as well as they hope he would, they thought he could when they drafted him, then none of this is going to be an issue. But it is something that a player's got to protect himself on against that worst case scenario. It's something that agents use against each other in recruiting, and then for the team, it's something too where if you give a rookie a favorable contract term, that can come back to bite you with veteran players when they go to the table looking for contracts. So it's a little complicated that way. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes because I don't think anybody is completely in the right on this one.
Albert, real quick, when you book a trip with a family, do you use trip protection or is that a scam?
I've never used trip protection. It's never been a problem. Do you?
I don't even know what made me do it. But last night, my wife and I booked a trip for 4th of July week, and I absolutely bought the trip protection. I felt like a schmo the entire time. I have no idea what possessed me to do. I've never done it before.
What does it protect you from, like getting bumped off a flight because they oversold it?
Like
that
delays, like cancellations.
Right?
Yeah, it's kind of all encompassing.
So it's like buying an insurance policy on your plane ticket?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats to you for having that.
Thank you for making me feel even dumber. Albert, great stuff, man. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I was really hoping Albert
that was great.
would polish that one for me, make me feel better. No, he made me feel twice as dumb.